It's an honor and a pleasure to be sitting across a very beautiful woman, a fantastic mother, one of the strongest people in our area. Miss Kerry Maggard is sitting across from me. You're listening to the Ragin Cajuns podcast. I'm Kevin Wilson. The First Lady of the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns is in the building today. How are you?
I am good, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for those kind words.
Now, I have to say all those kind words because you were late.
I was late.
We set a time for 10, and you just rudely came in at 10:03.
I always estimate Cali Sloom traffic, so you would think that after a year and a half, I would be a little better at organizing my departure time, but still working on that.
Minor details. It's off my chest, so I'm good now. Where you from, Kerry?
You know, I was born and raised in Manhattan, Kansas. It is a small college town. Kansas State University is located there.
They're kind of popular.
They do, although they became very successful after our stint there. So it's fun to go back because the entire town is painted purple now. So you pull in, and the spirit there is just really neat to see. But it was a great place to grow up. I actually stayed in my hometown to go to college. So I attended and graduated from Kansas State University.
Growing up, did you play any sports or cheerleading? Or
You know, I was a cheerleader. I played tennis. For some reason, I think it was my senior year in high school, I decided I wanted to go out for the tennis team, which was way overestimating my ability to pick up the sport of tennis in a summer. But I did and enjoyed it, just enjoyed the experience. So cheerleading and tennis, I was on the music side more than the athletic side. So played the piano and was in choirs. And
so you can sing a little bit.
I wish I could sing better than I do, but
We're always hard
I respect
critics
it.
on ourselves. You got a little something you can give us?
No, absolutely not.
Cool. So you end up staying at home, going to Kansas State. Is that where you met Bryan?
It is. So, long story short.
Now, before you continue.
Yes.
Okay, because he told the story.
Yes, well,
and of course
we'll see how much he told.
He was dapper. He was debonair, smooth.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could tell us the truth on how you two met and then eventually got together long term here.
Well, I'm sure he mentioned that he did date a girl in my sorority for a couple years. I always knew who he was because
Thought he was cute?
I thought he was cute, but he was totally off limits because he was the boyfriend of a sorority sister. And you just don't break that code. But, things happened and there was a breakup there, and about a year later, so I don't know if there's a actual grace period where it's okay, but it was at least a year. We actually had a class together. It was a journalism law class, and it was his last semester, so it was his senior year. I was a year behind, so it was my junior year. And we kind of got in a routine where we'd sit together because we knew each other, and sometimes we'd actually trade notes. So if I went to class one day and he didn't, that was a way to gain the notes that he had missed, and vice versa. I'd like to say I attended 100% of those classes, but I know I didn't.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, that kind of was the beginning. That summer was the start of.
What did his hair look like?
A little bit. He had really good hair.
Like long?
Lots of no. Similar style as today, maybe a little bit higher.
Everything was bigger.
Yes, everything was bigger. The
Yeah.
80s, I definitely had bigger hair. Blue eyeshadow, big hair.
Were you still cool with the sorority sister after?
Oh
boy. Yeah.
I'd like to say that I'm not sure we've ever had a conversation. And she was older than me. I think everything's fine now. She's happily married with children too. But no, we don't exchange Christmas cards. I'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm. It's a little snug in the household. Did you consider yourself a homewrecker once you got with Bryan Maggard?
Not at all.
It was over.
It was over. Oh yes, it was over. So yes, no, there was no turning back, and I think it was mutually over on both sides. So she had moved on.
What were your plans in college? What were you going to be?
That's a great question, Kevin. And I started in education and then switched to music education. And had a couple experiences through the curriculum that I just didn't know that was the route I wanted to go. I've always liked writing. So I was interested in broadcast journalism at that point, and actually have a degree in broadcast journalism. Although in Manhattan, Kansas, there's not a large market for broadcast journalists. So Bryan and I actually were married a month after I graduated from college. So I graduated in 1991. In the month of May. We were married in June 29th. We have an anniversary coming up.
You guys showed patience, I see. Yeah.
That's right, yes. And we stayed, at that point, I was actually working in the athletic department there. I was working as a student in the football offices, and then was offered a job when the assistant coach's secretary departed about the same time that I was getting ready to graduate. So I slid into that role and was the assistant for the assistant coaches, secretary, or assistant football coaches, which was a fun position. Bryan at that time had started in the academic field, so he was in the same building in a different wing. So it was a comfortable first job, and I'd like to say that I used my college degree, but not directly, because we were there for 2 years, and then had a stint at Florida State where I worked in again in the athletic department. So the journalism degree was. I'm proud of it. I enjoyed my experiences there, but I really never used that to its fruition. Although I have used my writing quite a bit throughout the years.
Does it irk you a little bit that you never really explored like the TV side of things or the radio side of things?
You always wonder what if, but hey, I wouldn't change a thing. But yeah, sometimes I think, gosh, I wonder what if I had pursued that. What would that have led to? But no regrets.
Well, it ends up that you hitched your wagon to a husband who was hungry for athletics and growing quickly. You mentioned that stint at FSU where you guys were married, and is Dalton your oldest?
Yes, Dalton is our oldest, and he was born in Tallahassee, Florida, and we picked up and moved that newborn baby and 2 cats that were on some kind of high prescription drug to keep them from howling, but picked up and moved him when he was 10 days old to Missouri. And I actually had kind of a rough first delivery. So I ended up in a C-section, was in the hospital for about 5 days, and Bryan and my mom crossed at the airport in Tallahassee. She was coming to be with me while I was still in the hospital, as Bryan was flying to Columbia, Missouri to choose our home. And for our move, we knew that we were moving. We didn't have a home to move to.
And he was taking what position?
He was taking the position as director of academics for football at the University of Missouri at that time.
Now, while you guys were at Florida State for that very brief stint, were you working as well?
I was working in the athletic department there, actually.
Both you guys were
in the academic
I think you
arena.
mentioned he was in the equipment area?
That was when he was in college. He was a equipment manager at Kansas State, and then did a stint with the Redskins as an internship after college.
Gotcha. And then the Florida State situation wasn't the biggest fan of.
Looking back, it was a great experience. It was fun. Bobby Bowden was just a huge name at that time, still is an icon. So it was fun to be in the environment, They won the national championship the first year they were there. So it was a phenomenal experience for us. It was, to say it was an easy move would be a false statement. It was my first move ever away from my hometown. And we were young, we were newly married, still just trying to navigate life at that point. So I think, we took advantage of some great experiences in Florida, explored Florida. That was pre-kids, so we could just take off and go and have fun. But we just, it didn't click for whatever reason. And we just, especially when we knew we were going to have a grandchild born, we wanted to be closer to family. So that took us back to the Midwest.
And so 10 days after you go through a rough birthing experience, you end up heading back to the Midwest.
We did.
With a very, very young child.
Yes. Into a home that Bryan Maggard had chosen on his own. So
you didn't get your eyes on it.
This was before cell phones. So
Zillow. Realtor.com.
Yes. So literally, conversation over the phone as he was describing.
It's got a refrigerator.
Yeah, it has a 3 bedrooms and a garage, and what more did we need? But he did a great job. Looking back, I think, wow, that was a big responsibility on that new dad, and but it was a little bit daunting as we made that drive. It was about a 18-hour drive from Tallahassee to Columbia. And it was just a surreal feeling as we pulled into town. And I thought, this is our new life. This is our new home. We have a child. We're moving into a home I've never seen. And starting to lay down a foundation here, which turned into 22 years and just wonderful memories.
Now, mentally, you go from being in literally the same city your entire life to moving to 2 different major cities, and now you have a child. Your wagon is hitched to this man who's growing his career. Mentally, how are you going through that?
We were going, in my mind, especially when we went to Florida's kind of an experience, just kind of a, hey, let's try this. When we moved back to Missouri, I felt like we were going home because that put us about 4 hours from my family and about 5.5 from his. So I felt like that was just a comfort zone. So it was exciting. Columbia is a great college town, and we quickly established roots there and made some great friendships, and maintain those friendships really to this day.
Except with the sorority sister.
Except with the sorority. I think she'd moved by then.
So, Bryan mentioned, revealed on the sit down with him, that he had a scare with cancer as well while your children were young.
He did. And wow, it came out of the blue. Very similar to about 7 months ago when mine did. But yes, we had very small children.
Now, were you a 1 in, 2 in?
We were 3 in. So we had a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old at that time. And it was the summer of 2002. So we're going on almost 17 years ago. And he self-exam had just something wasn't right. And so, not thinking anything about it, I think he went to the athletic trainer, which is right there in the building. And I think they didn't feel that was any concern, but put him with one of the team docs. And the team doc, again, wasn't concerned, but sent him for a scan, ultrasound, I think. And I was at the pool with a friend. I had the kids at the pool with a friend. Never on my mind that he was going to come and tell me that they had found cancer. But yes, he was diagnosed that day with testicular cancer. And it was about 2 days before our oldest daughter was starting kindergarten. And the day after she started was surgery. So with testicular cancer, they move really fast. That surgery was within 3 days, as I recall, of diagnosis. They move really fast, but it is a very successful outcome as long as it's caught early and treated. So he went through surgery, and then we entered kind of a wait and see mode. So it was about 9 months of, I believe it was monthly blood tests. And they wait to see if any remaining cancer cells indicate that it still remains. About 9 months in, that blood test showed that, yes, the cancer was still in his body. So he started 9 weeks of really tough chemo and lost his hair. At that time, again, the kids were 3, 5, and 7, and it was rough, Kevin. It was rough on him. It was rough on us. Thankfully, the kids, they can remember going to the chemo room and getting candy because the nurses up there were so wonderful, and when we couldn't find a sitter or we just felt like the kids, it was better for the kids to be with us, they would go up and sit while he, had the IV bags drained for several hours at a time, and so they have good memories of the Missouri Cancer Association where he was, but it was rough. It was rough. We were surrounded by some really great people that pulled us through it. And I think I didn't worry about a meal for almost 3 months straight. We had more food at our house than we could eat, and he really didn't have an appetite, so much more than the kids and I could eat. Had a group of men. He was involved in a church men's group, and they came over one evening on the deck, and they all shaved their heads after he had lost his hair. So I look back, and we were so surrounded by blessings at that time. But it was rough. It was a rough patch.
What gets lost in a lot of this is when one person is ill or goes down, someone still has to take over the household. You were forced to be a pillar at this point in time. You got the 3 kids, Dalton, Kaylin, Aubrey, and then the man of the house goes down unexpectedly. The pressure that was on you day to day, how did you go through that?
I'd like to say that I was always strong, but gosh, there were times, and I'll tear up just thinking about it, but there were times that I had to be lifted up, and there were people that did that for me, and I'm very thankful for them. I particularly remember one Easter, and Easter, when you have three-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son, Easter's usually about those cute little outfits that you put them in and take those pictures. And I just remember this Easter, Brian was sicker than a dog, laying on the couch, couldn't keep any food down. I had one of the kiddos, I think it was Aubrey, had strep throat, so I ended up Easter morning at her with her at the doctor's office, who was on call, and I still remember that, thinking this could not get any worse. But gosh, so many people have a lot worse, and we look back and we made it, and we didn't make it alone. We had a lot around us that lifted us up, both together and individually when we needed it.
Did you ever get a chance, and I know it's tough with small children especially, but did you ever get a chance to get some alone time, breathe, and reset? What was that switch that went off in you and said, okay, this is happening, I've got to move?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Yes, I probably didn't do it enough, because I would usually bottle it up until there's just a point of break, so to speak. We had the kids' teachers at that time. from preschool to the kindergarten teacher to our second grade teacher, they were just phenomenal and very sensitive to keeping the kids after school, taking them to ice cream, keeping them for an afternoon, which gave us a break either together or individually. I had friends that would sense that I needed to get out of the house and would come over and just grab me to go get coffee or ice cream or just to sit in a car and cry and talk. Yes, so there were times when I didn't hold it all together, for sure. And it's physically and mentally hard to go through that process of having a spouse who's going through cancer treatment. But then there's also the worry piece, the mental piece that he's dealing with individually and that I'm dealing with as I worry about what's ahead.
I'm assuming a lot of studying and learning about what cancer actually is, what it means, short-term and long-term went into it. How much learning did you do in that time period?
Oh, we did a lot. Brian is he's a fix-it person. He's a researcher, and gosh, I'm so thankful in these last 7 months that he's taken that role when I've been so completely overwhelmed. But thankfully, his oncologist was a neighbor. He lived down the street. So bless his heart, I think he had us knocking on his door more than he ever bargained for. But every time he'd drive by trying to go home, he had to pass our house. So we'd usually flag him down and ask him
You're standing outside
question.
waving him.
You bet. We were outside a lot with the kids. We knew his schedule. But yes, lots of research. Indiana is kind of the specialist spot for testicular cancer. So there was a lot of research done, both by us, mainly Brian probably, and then his oncologist consulting up there. So we really felt like we were very well advised, well informed of his options, and that was 17 years ago. So very successful.
Take me to the moment where you both find out that he's healthy.
It's a process. They, following surgery, 9 months later, chemo, then he started going in for monthly blood tests. And again, the blood test is what found it. And so it's a process, and I'm right there with my situation now. But it is your anxiety when you know that appointment's coming up begins to rise, and then you just wait. You wait for that phone call. You wait for that number, and at the time we knew exactly what that number needed to be in that normal range. So we'd wait to hear that was in the normal range, and slowly, 1 month checkups went to 3 month checkups, went to 6 month checkups, went to yearly checkups. And as I recall, he probably, I bet maybe 12 years out was the last time that he actually had to go to the oncologist for a yearly checkup. So testicular cancer, again, very high success rate once it's treated correctly, and you get to a certain point where they
say you're good.
They're pretty confident that you're done with it.
And so, were you guys at that last appointment together?
We were, yes. I after I missed that initial appointment of diagnosis.
There every time, huh?
You bet. I was there.
And then, so the oncologist says, "Hey, man,
you're done. You're done." Yeah.
Did you get to hug Brian?
See you later. You bet.
That's a different type of hug.
It is.
What was that feeling like?
It was so far out that our peace was a different level than it was as we were going through that first year. So as you get further and further away, your confidence begins to build, which is good. It's good in so many ways. So it was just kind of a tie a bow on it. Part of our past we got through it. It wasn't easy. There were some rough patches. Learned a lot. We were blessed much more than we were tried. But yeah, it was a great feeling to be officially cancer-free for 12 plus years. Yeah.
So Bryan puts back on his Superman cape. He's back at work. You guys stay in Columbia for over 20 years. Family is raised there. Kids go off to college, which is a blessing. All three went to college, correct?
Yes.
You got two who
have graduated. Two are through college. Yeah, as of about a month ago, the awesome. Second one finished up. And then Kaylin she'll start her third year this fall at Juilliard.
What a blessing that is.
Absolutely.
Now, as you wait patiently for your kids to make it through school, you've been in Columbia for so long, and you love staying in one place. This is your thing. You're happy at home.
Yes.
But there's an opportunity in Lafayette, Louisiana. Athletic Director opportunity. This means Bryan has a chance to, this is it. He brings this opportunity to you, and you say what?
Well, Kevin, at one point we just committed to getting our kids raised in Columbia, Missouri. They were very involved in different capacities. Dalton in music and running at school, and then Aubrey and Kaylin both in the dance programs. They had a really special studio in Columbia that we just got to a point where to move those kiddos was going to rock their world. Mm-hmm. Too much. And thankfully, Bryan was able to excel up the ranks in the athletic field there at Missouri. So started as I think I told you, a director of academics for the football program, moved to director of academics for the athletic department, which led to excelling until he was right hand to the athletic director, and so he was professionally ready for the next step, and we really felt like timing wise, once Kaylin was in her senior year of high school, that it was time to start looking at any possibilities. Now, we were very choosy. We weren't willing to relocate just to take a job. Mm-hmm. Love college towns. I was born and raised in a college town, and love Columbia, Missouri. So we were seeking the right fit. And when this position became available, it was immediately intriguing. I am not a fan of winter, so to think of moving south was a huge attraction to me. A little less ice during the winter. That's right. That's right. But again, we did our research. I told you, Bryan's a researcher, so there was a lot of time and energy put into exploring what this opportunity would involve, and if it was the right fit.
And your babies are out the house now.
Kaylin's still in high school, but yes,
she was still in high school.
Yes, she was a senior in high school at the time.
So Bryan came down first.
He did.
I do remember that. Okay, and then she graduates, and then you join him.
Yes.
Your first visit to Lafayette, what was that experience like?
Well, I had an opportunity to visit Lafayette with him when he interviewed. So had a great experience, just immediately embraced by the people that we met. That was the first thing that stood out, was just the friendliness of this community. So we really, really felt good about that. The size of the town was a good fit.
Shockingly good, right?
Yeah, shockingly good. It is a little bit larger than Columbia, although it's interesting because I ask people, what's the population here? And you'll get everything from 120,000 up to 220. So I think there's so many of those surrounding towns, and I'm still learning all of them. But traffic can be dicey, especially at the holiday season. So, But it was it just seemed like a good fit when we interviewed, and we were really excited when he received the call from Dr. Savoy offering him the position. And everything was put on hold, though, because Kaylin at that time was auditioning for colleges. She's a dancer, and so actually the couple days that we spent here interviewing for his job, she flew solo up to Chicago, and that was her Juilliard audition weekend that was taking place in Chicago, and we flew from Lafayette up to Chicago and met her there. So stress was a little bit high in our house at that point between the two situations going on. But our focus after he accepted the job was really to get her through that last semester of high school intact without rocking her world too much. So I stayed in Columbia until the August of that year, and then had made a couple long drives down here to look for housing. So that was always fun. You weren't going to miss
this one, huh?
No, I was going to be involved in this. Bryan got the first one, but that's the only one he's gotten. So we felt like we had a good feel for it, but when flying back from, we met in New York City to move her into the dorm the end of August of 2017, and then he and I flew back together. And the moving van had moved all of our things into our house. So I came to a home that was just full of boxes, Kevin. So I had a lot of work ahead of me, but it was a little bit daunting. And to say it was otherwise would not be true. A little bit overwhelming, and honestly, the empty nest entrance, I think, probably rocked my world a lot more than the move itself. So I, just really missed the kids being in and out of the house. Kaylin, of course, was still in the house until she went to college. Aubrey went to the University of Missouri, so she was a 5-minute drive away. And then Dalton had to actually move back to Columbia. So just went from having a kind of a revolving door, kids in and out, friends in and out, to just a really quiet house full of big boxes that needed to be unpacked, and everything needed to find a place.
You feel lonely?
Yeah, it was a lonely feeling. Thankfully, Bryan's job gets me out of the house a lot. So I think that was good, because immediately we were 4 or 5 nights a week had obligations or sporting events or yes. So I think that was good, because I didn't have too much time to stay at home and talk to the dogs and and dwell on it. But yeah, it was tough. It was a tough transition. I think I'm still transitioning and trying to find my niche, but it's good.
Should have gotten a TV when you had the chance. When was your first experience with crawfish?
That would have been just last season. So I didn't come until fall. The kids and I sat in Columbia, Missouri for that semester, Kaylin's last semester, and that was when Bryan was down here for 6 months by himself. And he would text us all, just picture after picture of him in front of a huge plate of these red creatures that we really had never experienced. So he would eat crawfish every day of the week for the entire season if he could. I didn't try them until last season.
And how did you even attack? Because I can't. I mean, it looks like an insect, so I can't do it.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I don't like to see faces of things that I eat. Yeah. So even the shrimp, and I appreciate the freshness of the seafood down here, but I just don't want to see their eyes looking at me.
In despair.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is our routine now. I learned how to peel crawfish, eat crawfish. I'm not sure the correct terminology. I learned how, so I can do it. But it's not my favorite thing to do. I spend, which people will laugh down here, but I spend more time dabbing all of the the things, the extra yellow fat or veins off of the crawfish than I do eating it. So now, if we have crawfish, Bryan will usually debody it. I don't know what the term is.
That sounds very aggressive, but it's somehow correct. Yes.
And then I'll take over my cleaning ritual from there. He's a huge fan.
Now, what about boudin?
I've never tried it. No. I actually have
That's where you draw the line. You can eat a whole body.
Well, here's my defense on that. I have a pork and beef allergy.
Oh, okay.
So I can't even go there, and maybe I don't want to go there. I don't know. I asked one time what was in it, and I was told don't ask. So I know it's a delicacy and everyone loves it, but I can't do it.
Yeah, I can dig it. A few, let's say almost a year ago, we got a staff email from Bryan, opening up to everyone, saying that Kerry Maggard has been diagnosed. Stage 1 breast cancer. How'd you find out? It
hit us once out of the blue, and about 16 years later, it just knocked us off our feet again. So I had a big birthday, Kevin, last a year ago. I've stopped counting now because I hit the big birthday. But I did what was appropriate for that big birthday mark and scheduled a thorough checkup with my general practitioner last September. So had a big blood screening at that time. Everything was fine. And then I had a gynecology exam, yearly mammogram. I never missed an annual mammogram. And that was in September of last year. And I still have that letter. I have a letter that said, "Congratulations, your mammogram showed nothing. Come back in the next year." And about a month later, I felt a lump, and just out of the blue, and it wasn't very big, but it was something you just red flags go up when you feel something that doesn't feel normal. So I called my doctor, and thank goodness, even though she'd seen me the month before, she had done a physical exam. She had a mammogram report that showed there was nothing there. She had me come in. And I look back and I think, thank goodness she went that extra step to really at least put my mind at peace, if nothing else, by having me come in. And she examined, she felt it. She called the radiologist, and they ordered an ultrasound. Again, didn't feel it was anything to be concerned about. I wasn't concerned about it. No family of breast cancer. No history of family breast cancer. Really no history. I've had to go way back to find a couple distant cousins that had any sort of cancer in my whole lineage. So it just, again, was not on my mind. But it was October 25th, and we had the soccer girls coming over for dinner that night. So I was busy at home, and got a phone call from the radiologist's office, and they said, "We have an opening. Can you slip in here at 1 this afternoon?" And I said, "I can, but I've got girls coming over at 5:30. How long will it take?" And they said, "We'll have you in and out in an hour." So I went in, did a test. That test led to another test, led to me being taken into a room where they said they felt they needed to biopsy. Did I want to stay and do the biopsy that day or come back the next day? And 4 hours later, I had the radiologist looking at me in the eyes and saying, I need you to know I'm worried this is cancerous. So, again, just like you hit a wall, and Bryan wasn't there. Same situation. It was just not on our mind. Now, I texted him at one point. I went and got my phone. I texted him when I could see things were not not looking positive. But put on a smile that night. We had girls coming in, and they didn't need to deal with that. And we were waiting on biopsy results for the next day. So got the sweet girls fed, and it was good. It was actually good to have a distraction in the house that night. And then received a phone call the following day about 5 o'clock. It was on a Friday. And the surgeon confirmed that it was cancerous. It was caught early. It was stage 1. They felt it was about 7 millimeters, less than a centimeter. But we were on track to begin the process.
You had seen this before. You saw what Bryan went through. How comforting was Bryan in that initial moment when you guys found out?
He's been so good, Kevin. So solid. He's a rational thinker, and I'm not. And he's very black and white. He's a researcher. So his ability to kind of take charge at that moment and many moments since has really taken that weight off of me, so I could just really kind of try to get to the next minute without falling apart. So he also understands the mental worry because he's been there. So he's been unbelievably a strong pillar from day one, and remains now, even as I continue going through testing and just the mental battle of what if it returns.
We all sort of put up a wall when we're around another person, even people we love, to show that we're strong. Your first moment alone with this news, what was that like?
We have a pond behind our house, a neighborhood pond, and there are ducks out there, and that has just become my little haven of peace. Many laps have been walked around that pond. It's about a half-mile loop, and I take the dogs out there probably 3 times a day on average. But many laps have been walked, with tears streaming down my face. But it's a time to just get away and pray, and there's something about being in nature and just the peacefulness and the beauty of it. Usually is a good place for me to go when times are a little bit rough.
You and Bryan knew the news. But you have 3 kids. You have to tell them that mom is sick. How did that go down?
Well, that was rough because at that time, Caitlin was in New York, Dalton was in Nashville, Tennessee, and Aubrey was in Columbia, Missouri. So it's hard to break news like that when you're dealing with kiddos who are in 3 different states. And we actually had interesting timing. Received the diagnosis on that Friday, on that Sunday. So 2 days later, we had tickets to travel to Hawaii with the Louisiana golf team. And that trip was planned months before this diagnosis. But our surgeon said, go. He said, go, get away. And we did. And it was, I'd like to say I enjoyed Hawaii like it should have been enjoyed, but it was a lot of tears inside of the walls. None of the players or the coaching staff, no one knew at that time except Bryan. So it was kind of surreal to be in this amazing setting, beautiful setting, but yet internally trying to wrap our heads around what was going on. setting up appointments. So we would come off the course from cheering on the team, and I'd spend a few minutes on the phone setting up an MRI that needed to be scheduled, looking at potential surgery dates. And so it was I look back and I think maybe that was God's gift to us to just give us a reprieve away from having to see people here who it would have been hard to mask at that time what we were going through. So we were there for, gosh, I can't even remember. It was a blur, but maybe four nights. But came back and made the decision that we were not going to tell our kids until we knew exactly what we were dealing with. So there's still testing that needed to be done. And I returned one evening, was in the office for an MRI, I think 8 a.m. the next morning. And after we got the MRI results, we told the kids, and I think that was 3 days before surgery was already scheduled. And we FaceTimed each individually. Thank goodness for technology, because we got to see their faces, and maybe that was a little bit harder than making a phone call. But they all took it differently. They all reacted differently. I think they're still processing differently, and it's hard to really know how to meet each of them individually from a distance. But we explained the process, explained the great diagnosis of catching it early, and what we hoped for was that it had not spread to the lymph nodes, and that's what the surgery would reveal. But they handled it like champs, and I think they, it definitely rocked their world.
The process of recovery, or getting back to health, chemotherapy, radiation treatment? Radiation.
So I'll walk you through that a bit. I had a lumpectomy on November 8th, and with cancer, it's a lot of test, procedure, and then wait. Test, procedure, wait. And the test procedure parts are a lot easier than the wait in between. And those waiting periods are where you really battle mentally, because you're waiting to see what was found, what the test results were, and what lies ahead. So I had a lumpectomy, had to wait, I'd say probably 5 days or so. Maybe close to a week before they had the pathology report, and so we're so thankful that it revealed that it had not spread to my lymph nodes. They had to do another test called an onco score, which kind of factors in if they add chemo to the regimen, if that reduces reoccurrence. And I had kind of a gray area test, to be very honest with you. It was kind of I was 50 at the time, and all the statistics were either below 50 or above 50, and there I was right in this gray area. So ultimately, we consulted, the best medical team, in my opinion, in this area. I have about 4 doctors that are working directly with my situation, and they felt that surgery followed by 20 rounds of radiation was the appropriate route to go, and felt like that was the effective route that would be the best for preventing reoccurrence. So went through, healed from surgery, started radiation, I believe, January 2nd.
Now, radiation, the treatment, what does that mean? What do you go through in that?
Radiation is a little bit daunting to hear about, and to hear that you have to go every day of the week, Monday through Friday. But I can't complain at all. Again, I was able to bypass the chemo, And the radiation, I spent more time, honestly, Kevin, looking for a parking place than I did on the table. It's the staff is phenomenal, very efficient. They know what they're doing. It's very precise. So it's kind of like getting a little bit longer X-ray. Had to hold my breath for 30 plus seconds. But I was really good at that. And sometimes they could even double the dose because I could hold through too. Yeah. But I was just determined to really eat healthy and to maintain exercising through that month of January. And I felt like it was pretty healthy going into that month of January. I knew that was going to be important. And so we maintained our routine, and I really feel like that helped. There's lots of side effects of radiation, but I feel like I escaped many for whatever reason, maybe not related to diet and exercise, but very thankful that other than some minor side effects, it was very tolerable.
The treatment and the mental anguish you're going through on a daily basis, did it make it hard to get up in the morning?
Yep, still does. Yeah. So you almost, and I remember this with Bryan too, and it kind of comes back to you when you're going through it again. But when you're going through treatment, so when you're going through surgery or you're going through radiation or those that have to go through chemo, you feel like you're doing something. You're doing something to eradicate those cancer cells, and you're physically feeling like you are part of the process. And so the hardest part, honestly, mentally, has been from February and continues today, because treatment's over. And now in between, my mind goes to what if this next test shows it wasn't eradicated? What if 6 months from now we have to go down the chemo route? So it's kind of a moment in time where I'm trying to navigate what's a new normal, what's a new normal for me, for us, and yes, there are this community again has just wrapped us up in love and prayers, and we're so appreciative. But every time we go out, somebody brings it up, and very, very sweetly intended. But every time someone says, "I'm praying for you. How are you doing? How are you feeling?"
It's just a trigger.
It's a trigger. It's a blessing because we're so thankful for all the prayers and all the support. But it's a trigger. It remains a trigger still today, and so I still fight that, just the mental side right now.
Are there times where you felt that, or you find yourself asking God why, or is this karma? What did I do to deserve this?
Absolutely. I think that's natural. We all think, why us? Why, had a big move across the country when my kiddos were not in the house anymore. I lost my mom last May, about 6 months before the cancer diagnosis. So it was a lot. It was a lot to go through. And then at the same time, you're just constantly reminded of people that go through so much more. And there are so many more difficult circumstances. And so you're quickly grounded in what we have and all that we've been blessed with. And like I said, we've been showered with love, showered with meals, showered with prayer. And so you learn to put your focus on what do we have what have we gained? What have we learned? As opposed to, why me? What did we lose? What happens next? So that's got to be your focus. I think otherwise you go to a very dark place.
The area is used to our football team. If they make it to a bowl game, it's in New Orleans. It's in the local area. This year, there's an invite to go to Orlando for the Cure Bowl, which is doing their damnedest every year to raise money for research and treatment to attack cancer on a daily basis. And we get an invite to that bowl game. What was that feeling like to get that news? And then what was the bowl game experience like? Because you were really the face of this movement for the Ragin Cajuns.
You know, to think that there's not a greater purpose or a greater plan for the diagnosis, when you find your team being invited to the Cure Bowl, the first time ever for our team to travel to a bowl game that embraces this is such, it is the focus of their entire being. It's pretty phenomenal to think about that. And I always say, there was no one standing on the sideline on that cold, wet day at App State cheering harder than me. Would love to have seen our team get that championship title. But when it was evident that we were going to the Cure Bowl, it's a realization that we're here for a greater purpose, for a greater meaning, and what can we do to bring more awareness? What can we do to reach out to others? What can we do to use this platform that we didn't wish for, but that we received to do some good? So that was our mindset going into that week. I'd like to tell you that I was really strong in Orlando, but I was really weak. It was really soon to be kind of put in that position, and every event again was a trigger. Hearing from everything from the opening welcoming ceremony where, a gal, strong gal, who's fighting metastatic breast cancer right now with a 9-year-old daughter, who stage 4, as she reaches out to the team and is just this pillar of strength and inspiration, I was in tears standing there listening, because it's a constant reminder of what if that's my path. So, it was a surreal week. We had 2 of our kiddos that flew down to be with us, and that was a blessing. Denise, Jaluk Jabbar's wife, Denise, was an incredible blessing to me, because she's traveled a much harder journey in her breast cancer survivorship, and gosh, she's a strong woman, and very encouraging and uplifting to me that week. So I was surrounded by a lot of emotion. It was great to be there. Really impressed and overwhelmed by what the Cure Bowl stands for and is doing and has done in terms of breast cancer research. But it was an emotional week.
Where are you at today?
Today I'm okay. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it's day to day. Some days are good days. I just went through a round of about 3 more tests, and everything's good. Everything's good. Everything was clear. I have another big test the end of this month, a blood screening. So you just kind of gear up for that next test right now. Trying to live today and not live in the future is tough for me. So I'm still navigating that. Really still navigating how to how to put the worry and the what ifs in the back of my mind. Not that I want to be blindsided or not recognize any warning signs or symptoms that could occur. But I also don't want to. I don't want that to be my focus day to day.
What would you tell someone who is freshly diagnosed, much like yourself, out of the clear blue sky? What would you tell someone who's going through that process, getting that fresh diagnosis and knowing that path that they're about to take?
I appreciate, and we appreciate, so many who have reached out. I can tell you the most beneficial people who have reached out to me have been those who have walked the walk. And, Denise is one. Those I have, breast cancer is it doesn't discriminate, age, economic status, area of country. Probably all of us have some relative, whether close or distant, that has gone through it. So, I think there's something to be said, though, for those that have gone through the process and understand the mental side of it, who have reached out to me and have been very, very honest. Everything from, hey, this is what to expect when you are healing from surgery, to this is what to expect when you are going through radiation. This is the skin cream that I found most beneficial, or here's a Bible verse, or here's a song that I have found brings me peace. Those are the kinds of things, and inevitably, we flew to Houston a few weeks ago for a UL alumni event, and a mom of one of our current players, and I'm drawing a blank on their name right now. Jones is his last name. But she came up to me and she said, I want you to know we've been praying for you. I have a mom who is, I think, 18-year survivor, and I have an aunt who is a, maybe 16-year survivor. And I just cling to those words, because to hear 18, 30, 40-year survivor, those are just people that really fill me with hope. And I appreciate those that feel like, I didn't know her at all, but she felt an urge to reach out. And so I love to hear those stories. But I'd say if you're newly diagnosed, seek out those and be transparent and vulnerable to those who understand and have gone through it.
Kerry, I want to thank you for being so open today. I know this isn't easy. I know it's a day-to-day process, and the last thing you want to do is keep opening up a wound. But I certainly appreciate the time and just thank you for it.
You bet. It was a pleasure to be here, Kevin. Thank you so much.
The First Lady of the Ragin Cajuns, Kerry Maggard.